Hello everybody and welcome back to Suzerain. So in the last episode we went ahead and put our friend Peter to rest. We laid him to rest back in his hometown. Gave a nice sad speech so it could appear as everything was okay. And we also had a state visit from Dwight Walker, the president of Arcasia, and we joined Ado. So now we have a really strong alliance. We are allied with Lesbia, we're allied with Wayland, and we're allied with Agnolia up here. So yeah, we have three of the four possible alliances that you can turn around and get in the game. And we also have an alliance with Ado. We're a member of Ado, and our economy is starting to recover. The economy is doing a lot better now. Budget, we have a little bit of a surplus, so now we can start working on our re-election campaign. Don't know how it's gonna go, and we're still facing impeachment, but yeah, we're doing pretty good right now. So yeah, let's see. We have Kibner condemns BFF terror. What else we have down here in geopolitical? And we have Swordland shoots down Runeberg warplane in retaliation. So yeah, we're doing pretty good right now. We're doing really well. So let's see what we got here. The Rayne 57 campaign advertisement. Let's see what we got going on here. Oof. Okay. The election of 1957 is approaching fast, and a massive election campaign effort is taking shape. The public campaign funds available to the party are covering most of the costs, but we could put our own funds to increase the chances of victory. Different scale advertisement campaigns for the Rayne 1957 bid can be enacted. So, again, this comes out of your personal wealth. Now, the last time I did this, I think I had a personal wealth of like 6 or something like that, and I can't remember why I had a different personal wealth at the time. I know I didn't turn around and I think I sent my son to college for free in United Cantana, and then I also turned around and I had a deal with the football team, so that gave me some extra money as well. So this time around it's a little different, but I'm going to do a medium scale ad campaign. That's the only option I have. I think you can do a large scale ad campaign, and then I think there's one above that, but you need like 7 wealth in order to do that. So I don't think I have to use my personal wealth for anything else. So yeah, I'll go ahead and use a medium scale. And I have no personal wealth. All right. And Citizens Mobility Act of 1957. Let's see what this is. The Grand National Assembly aims to increase job opportunities, lift the economic burden off the low income bracket, and to boost inter-regional activity. Section 1 of the CMA of 57 will subsidize all forms of public transport inside Swordland, except for commercial planes, by using state funds. The act will enable all citizens to use the means of public transportation given through services such as buses, trams, trains, and ferries completely for free. Section 2 establishes that the luxury first class options are exempt from the act. So, we have some budget, so why not? I'm sure it'll help the economy a bit, so yeah. Alright, let's see what we got here from Swordland today. Free public transportation for Swordland. Of course they like that. And public transport to be accessible for all. They're okay with that as well. Let's see what we got down here. Election speech at the USPHQ. The sun was starting to peek through the blinds of my suite in the Grand Chariot Hotel in Enrica. I hadn't slept at all that night. I was too busy thinking about how I would rally my party's conservative base at today's election kickoff. I was just pulling on my clothes when 2 soft, sharp knocks came at the door. Lucien. Good morning, sir. Morning, Lucien. Lucien unclasped his briefcase and took out a small disc-shaped device. After scanning the room with it, he gave a satisfied nod. I've just received the final results of your investigation into the old guard. Well, don't leave me in suspense. Lucien pulled out a folder and opened it. As you may recall, Carl Gracer hinted at a complex web of connections surrounding the old guard, as well as multiple cases of corruption and lobbying. However, he kept stalling whenever I pressed him for details. Eventually, I received this bulletin from the desk of the Secret State Police, supposedly a list of leads they'd uncovered. He handed me a sheet of paper. On it was a short list of names. Look at the first letter of each name. Nice try, Galad. Cute. Lucien smiled wryly. Lillius and the old guard undoubtedly have something to hide, but the secret state police is their instrument. I should have advised you not to pursue this. Sorry to have failed you. It was my fault, not yours. If you wish, you could still remove Lillius from her cabinet position for encouraging the police's insubordination, but it wouldn't make you very popular. Yeah, I won't go ahead and do it. I'll just leave it as it is right now, because I think due to certain other incidents that may end up happening, I can get out of this still, so I won't rock the boat. Now that that's settled, I'll let you prepare for your rally. Almost forgot, the Archpriest of Dare couldn't be present today, but wanted to relay a message of support to you and your family. What'd he say? I bless the rains down in Anrica. Lucian left the room. I finished putting on my tie and reread my notes for the morning speech. A few hours later, I was waiting in the wings at the Norsord Auditorium in Anrica. In the audience were several thousand of my conservative supporters. Behind the podium hung a Swordish flag and a giant banner that read, Your land, my land, Swordland. That is terrible. Peace, prosperity, and the Swordish way. Nah, victory's close. Everyone cheered as I walked on stage. Though Mayor Curtin Less was now part of the opposition as a member of the NFP, it seemed most of Anrica was still on my side. Gloria gave a short speech introducing me, then it was my turn. I stepped behind the podium and took a deep breath. Brothers and sisters of the USP. The past 3.5 years have seen our country tested again and again. Yet I stand before you now, ready to pledge myself to God and Swordland yet again. With my re-election, I will finish pulling Swordland's economy from the depths of recession. As armed militants threaten to tear us apart, I promise I will uphold law and order. And I will fight against the enemies of Swordland, both internal and external. And I remain committed to stamping out the corruption that has plagued Swordish politics for far too long. Thunderous applause erupted. Swordland has changed, but the USP remains as strong as ever. I have devoted an unprecedented amount of effort towards making Swordland's economy the best in the world. We will not lose. And I shall run for re-election with Gloria Torrey, Swordland's first ever female vice president. A roar shook the hall. It is time, my fellow swords. A new dawn is upon us, and it begins right here and right now. Amorgna West Corps. The audience enthusiastically finished the saying as streamers shot out of cannons behind me. My re-election campaign had officially begun. I stepped down from the podium. Alrighty, so my re-election is underway. I don't know how it's going to actually go. I'm probably not polling very well, but we'll see how certain things go. Alright. The campaign is estimated to cost hundreds of millions of Swordish rent. I'm actually a little surprised by that, because I mean, in the United States, I think the final tally of the entire 2020 election was like, what was it? I think $17 billion or something like that. And for this to be, you know, in the 1950s, a very dated time and stuff like that, and them to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm actually pretty surprised by that. So, I mean, because again, this is very dated, so. Let's see, Agnolia signal standing with Swordland. Okay. Nice. Alright, what do we have here? A briefing on the current economic situation. Hopefully it's a lot better. I arrived at the Ministry of Economy and proceeded upstairs. An assistant waiting by the door to the meeting room took my jacket. I opened the door and entered the largest boardroom in the building. Simon was sitting alone with a glass of water and his documents laid out before him. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon. He stood up when I entered and approached me. After a quick handshake, I took a seat. A knock was heard on the door, and Gloria entered the room. Apologies, I got held up. Did you start yet? Miss Vice President, no, not yet. Now that everyone is here, let's begin. As you all know, the agenda today is the economy review for our entire term. I will brief you quickly on what we have done so far, just as a refresher. Very well, start then. He gathered the documents in the pile in front of him and adjusted his glasses. From the pile, he produced 2 booklets and handed them over to us. Our extra focus on the economy has resulted in some small-scale positive growth. The extra resource allowed my ministry to optimize our plans as much as possible. It would be great if we follow up on this focus in the next term. Let's delve into more ingrained economic detail. Please turn to page 5. Let's start off with our economy plan. I'm glad to say that we're on track with our initial plan to go for a market economy. Most of our decisions so far have been pretty consistent. Thank you for your efforts, Simon. Indeed. Good job, Mr. Hull. Thank you. You're too kind. Let's move on with the report. If we're to describe what we have done so far, I would say that it is very close to a laissez-faire economic system. Please turn to page 16. I am happy to say that our trade has increased since the beginning of our term. We're on the right path. We should keep at it and maximize the potential. More trade means a more vibrant economy, which will increase our economic development. Although an argument can be made for it, we have started to become heavily reliant on other foreign economies. It is shameful that a great country like Switzerland has to rely on other countries. We need to become self-reliant as soon as possible. I see where you're coming from, but globalization is at our doorstep whether we like it or not. I don't see what is wrong with a little extra reliance on our allies and neighbors. We will have to carefully consider this matter on our second term. Please turn to page 17. While trying to fix the issues with our economic system, we went for a mixed approach. We didn't hold businesses above everyone else, and also tried to answer the requests of Swedish citizens. The balance is delicate and fragile. Bad news is the living standards are decreasing. We receive more and more complaints about our welfare system, which means less votes. Our opponents will use this against us. Exactly. Now turn to page 34. We've lost value in terms of our production rates compared to the last years. This is one of our weakest points right now. Then we need to fix this as soon as possible. I need everyone on this next term. As you wish. I will take a note. Moving on to logistics. We have problems in terms of logistics in our country. The infrastructure is currently lacking in quality and quantity. We need to make new roads and improve the already existing ones. There's rightful complaints from the people and the businesses. Ease of access means faster delivery and more vibrant internal economy after all. We are very close to the end. I want to talk about a few numbers. Please turn to page 57. I prepared a chart. All right. Our inflation rate is currently at an amazing 2%, down from 7%, the lowest that I have seen Switzerland since the beginning of our country. Swedish rent value has been largely maintained and the consumer prices have been stabilized, which means that the Swedish citizens are happy. Good. We need all the help we can get for re-election. Agreed. Mr. President, do you have any questions so far? No, we can go ahead and move on. Very well. I want to quickly highlight our budget expenditure. The numbers I got tell that overall we've been pretty conservative with spending our government budget. It's a good virtue to think ahead. However, we shouldn't forget that money that is not spent is just a piece of paper. Now going into the election and hopefully a second term, we need to decide on the way forward. One thing is clear. Currently, we have a solid economy, more than enough flexibility for something grand. This will ensure a dramatic increase to the public opinion and approval rates for our administration. It is sure to be helpful with the elections. What should we do, Mr. President? Any ideas? Oh, shit. Oh, now this is interesting. I actually didn't get this option the last time around. I think I had the option of My economy was an all green, but I didn't have the option to turn around and do anything grand because the economy was kind of jacked. So, interesting. We will pay back all student debts. We will give an unemployment wage to the people. We will provide housing assistance to the citizens. All of them are -3, which will throw the budget out of whack. But, interesting. I don't actually know. Let's see. I mean, students aren't going to like me because of of my politics in general, so I don't want to pander to them, really. Then again, an unemployment wage to the people could help, but unemployment isn't that high. I'll give housing assistance to the citizens, because I did see some issues about homelessness and stuff, so yeah. That is an excellent idea. Very well, consider it done. Now that that's out of the way, on the most important question of all, how are we doing with the recession? I see a few smiles in the room. I think we earned it. We have almost eradicated the recession in its entirety. We are now in a period of what I call the Swordfish recovery period. This warrants a celebration for sure. I like the sound of it, Swordfish recovery period. We've done well. History will remember the Rayne administration as the administration that ended the recession. Congratulations, everyone. This was only a dream a few years ago, and we achieved it. We will go out for drinks tonight, but for now, that is all for our meeting today. Thank you for coming. The meeting ended, and I walked fast to the cafeteria to grab a coffee. All right, and now look at that. Now our budget is back to -2, but we have all green bars as far as our economy goes. And if we come over here, let's see, we do have a market economy. But yeah, we've actually pulled ourselves out of this. We got rid of the whole recession thing. It's gone now. So yeah, we are doing good. We're doing real good. We have the Citizens Mobility Act that we just passed recently. And if I can get this thing to come down a bit, or I guess it just doesn't want to come down. All right. There we go. Yeah, we have citizen mobility increase and homelessness rate reduced. Nice. But yeah, our economy is great. That is what I like to see. So we did manage to turn around and save the economy. And if we can turn around and get reelected, then perhaps we can turn around and completely pull the economy out and have a booming economy. Let's see what reports we have. HOS AIDS election campaign. Thank you, Marcel Caranti, for helping me out. I guess he sees that it's good for him. And the NFP welcomes General Lutheran's son. Always great. All right, what do we have going on over here in Lechaven? PFJP Richter slogan, victory for everyone. Nice, kind of bites off mine, but all right. And we have a scheduled television interview. The makeup crew had just finished their preparations for the interview. Lucien stopped me on my way out to the balcony of the Blue Mansion where the filming crew was standing ready to start filming. Are you ready for the interview, sir? Honestly, I'm not sure if this was a good idea. Trust me, sir. I've done my best to make this happen. This is very important for our administration. The crew is ready to start filming. Mr. Sacker is excited to interview you. As I explained before, it would be bad press to decline the interview offer. They are the most prestigious interview program in the world, and they are from Beirut. The country is known for their neutrality. I don't think there will be too much pressure. I hope so, Lucien. I walked to the balcony and sat on the seat prepared for me, directly in front of Mr. Sacker. Thomas Sacker. Mr. President, welcome to One-on-One. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. Let us begin with the latest incident between Sordlin and Runeberg. An aircraft of the Swedish Air Forces was shot down by Runebergian anti-air guns a few weeks ago. Officials from the Runebergian government proclaimed that the aircraft was flying inside the airspace of Runeberg. Just a few days after the incident, Swedish anti-air guns shot down a Runebergian airplane. This time, your government proclaimed exactly the same, while the Runebergian government insisted that their plane was inside their airspace. Many argue that this was not a coincidence and the Swedish army acted intentionally in retaliation. Did you give such an order? Let me see. Their claim is nonsense. Our plane was shot down inside our borders. But what about the attack from your side? It doesn't seem like an accident. Their plane breached our airspace and our forces only acted in response to that. Are you saying that the Rumbergian officials are lying? Are you absolutely certain that their plane was inside Swordish airspace? Yes, they lied in both instances. These were harassments against Sordland. Do you believe these harassments could lead to an actual war between Sordland and Rumberg in the future? I believe that's what Rumberg wants. They've been working to get a justification for such an action. This week, the Arcasian government has condemned Rumberg for their actions against Sordland. Now that Sordland is also a member of the Ado, do you think this would deter Rumberg from creating a broader conflict? Let me see. I'm not sure. Rumberg sees itself as the third superpower of this world. We can expect anything from them. He stopped for a moment and took a brief look at his papers. Let's continue on that note. I want to expand a little more on your foreign policy. Let's talk about the ongoing conflict with the Helgi land, islands. Volxlanian Navy has been increasingly active in the Markian Sea. As you know, they've been harassing Agnolian ships, and recently, Swordish ships as well. I believe Sordland is committed to stand together with Agnolia. In fact, you have a military alliance with them. What do you think about the Volxland's actions and their claims on the islands? It is very concerning. We can't have them harass other nations of the Markian Sea. The seas are not theirs to claim. Do you think the hostilities between Agnolia and Volxland can erupt into a hot war? It's definitely a possibility. Therefore, all nations of Eastern Markopa should do their best to calm the situation. Would Sordland also get involved if the situation gets out of control? Oof, that's tough. Yes, the Swordish armed forces and the Swordish navy is ready to act if our allies need us. Why is it that you support Agnolia's side in this conflict, Mr. President? I'd rather not pick any sides here, but it's Volxland who's harassing Agnolia and pushing the problem. Okay, let's move on to another topic. Ah, shit, it's Wayland. I was hoping that because of the other questions I got asked that they would turn around and not ask questions about Wayland, but here we go. Last year, you have interfered in Wayland. Let him finish. Your operation was aimed at eliminating the Blutish Freedom Front. However, according to the reports from Alliance of Nations, both Wessex and Swordish forces partook in the killing of thousands of Blutish civilians. In fact, the recent AN investigation revealed that the death toll of the civilians is way more than first estimated, and that the Wessex forces created mass graves all around the country to hide the true numbers. Did you have any knowledge of this, Mr. President? Would you be willing to release a report from Sordland's side to the AN to clear up this huge controversy? Oh shit. That is insane. We have no knowledge of this inhumanity. I'd be more than willing to share our information with the AN. So are you denying the knowledge of the civilian deaths? Yes, I can easily say that we had zero knowledge of it. But how about, on the gesture of the director, he stopped before finishing his sentence. Well, it seems that that's all the time we have for today. The director shouted at the crew to stop recording. We both stood up and shook hands. Thank you for your valuable time, Mr. President. It was a pleasure. Hopefully next time we will meet again in Kairut. He smiled. Of course, Mr. President. You'd always be welcome in Kairut. Lucian walked up to the director and started talking to him. I went inside the building. The phone rang. Let's see, what's going on here? The operator said that it was Gloria Torrey on the line. Mr. President, sorry for calling you directly, but this is important. I just received word that they started the impeachment process. Oh boy. What happened? Speak. To be frank, we might be screwed. The Supreme Court and Chief Justice Orso Hawker is citing the emergency decree as an act of high treason against Sordland due to Article 100. We will defend ourselves and present the best case possible, of course, but it will be hard. We need to stay optimistic. We may still have a chance, but for now, I will let you take it all in. Talk to you later. The line dropped dead. Great. So now we're facing impeachment, and we're probably going to lose it as well. Following a brief visit to Lechaven, the president spent the afternoon meeting and taking photos with citizens. The patriotism was unexpected, but it was clear that the citizens were delighted to witness their president in person. Nice. So we have a good opinion overall with the public. And Blue's opinion is low, of course. They have every reason to not like me. Let's see what we got in the news here. Swordland's darkest hour. And the Supreme Court will proceed with the impeachment trial. And I enacted housing assistance that more than 5.3 million swords will benefit from. Nice. Living standards suffered. And will I be impeached? Oh boy. And they're not too happy about, the Economist is not too happy about the socialist housing, but we do have the great swordish economic recovery. So, that's always nice. So, I guess even if I do lose, I do win. Early morning at the Rayne household. As usual, I woke up early in the morning and I put on my clothes and went downstairs. I made a cup of finely ground swordish coffee along with a slice of buttered toast and sat down in front of the TV to watch the morning news. I changed the channel to SBC News and took a bite of my toast. I'm curious to see what President Rayne's response will be. For those who are tuning in late, today is certainly going to be a rough day for the administration. We have confirmation about the certainty of these leaks. This is nothing short of a major scandal that could very well lead to the impeachment of President Rayne. Oh, fuck. I froze and dropped the toast I was about to bite into. As per the recent information we have received, President Rayne's name is mentioned many times in these leaks. According to the documents, she picked up the paper in front of her and started reading. As part of the privatization process, President Rayne sold shares in a backroom deal to Marcel Caranti. We've been trying to reach out to the Maroon Palace about these allegations and scandals. However, we've been unable to reach anyone yet. Ah, shit. Turn off the TV. Oh boy, I buried my face in my hands. I woke up early in the morning as usual and put on my clothes and went downstairs. I made a cup of finely ground swordish coffee and a slice of buttered toast and sat down in front of the TV to watch the morning news. The phone rang. Pick up the phone. The operator said that it was Gloria Torrey on the line. Mr. President, sorry for calling you directly, but this is important. I just received word that they started the impeachment process. Wait, we just had this. Yeah, we just had this. So I'm guessing... Oh. So, is this like an error? Because originally they started the impeachment process because of the whole... of what was it? Yeah, because of the emergency decree, but now they're starting the they're starting the impeachment process because of the deal with Marcel Caranti? What? Is this a bug? Okay, so I think I might have encountered a bug and I don't know how this is going to play out. Private meeting with Lillius Graff, alright. The historic Graff Manor lay on the outskirts of Arvery. At the end of a long, winding drive, nearly 2 centuries old, it was as formidable as Lillius herself. Lillius had invited me here for a private dinner, just the two of us. I wasn't sure of her motivations, but was happy to have an excuse to escape the chaos back in Holsword. Sergei dropped me off at the door. Okay, let's knock. I used the heavy brass door knocker to signal my arrival. The butler answered and showed me into the parlor. Gas lanterns lent the wood panel room a cozy orange glow. Lillius was sitting on the sofa. Above her hung a nearly life-size portrait of a sallow, unhappy-looking young woman in a lace ball gown. Is that your mother? Lillius nodded. I was her only child, you know. Giving birth to me left her medically unable to conceive. My father never could forgive her for not bearing him a son, and she never forgave me. She took a measured sip of one of the 2 glasses of sparkling wine she was holding and handed me the other. Sounds like a painful childhood. The silver lining is that despite personally despising me, they felt compelled to grant me all the advantages a son would have had, including the education I needed to rise to my current position. Would you be so kind as to tell me why you invited me over? Given how your wife spends her time these days, I thought you might be in the need of a home-cooked supper. The butler silently stepped into the parlor and rang a silver bell. Speaking of which, she led me into the dining room, where a glittering chandelier hung from the high ceiling. Beneath it was a long table set for 2. A woman in an apron and chef's hat, Wessex by her appearance, ceremoniously presented a roast rack of venison. Smells delicious. The groundskeeper shot it this morning. Lillius bowed her head and said a quick prayer, then motioned for me to dig in. It was some of the best meat I'd ever had. Weighed in silence for a while, then Lillius pensively laid down her cutlery. Mr. President, I wish I had been consulted on this military parade decision. Is that really the best use of our time and resources given the mounting unrest in this country? The police are taking care of it a little too well, I might add. You gave the orders. You can't blame them for doing their job. As long as the threats are neutralized. Lillius pursed her lips. Those leaked revelations certainly haven't helped matters. Lies. Well, I'll just ask her what does she think about it. Or what I think she should do about it. I don't think the allegations will do much damage, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Thanks for everything you've done, Lillius. Lillius nodded. Anton, thank you for all the help you've given to my ministry during your term. I'm all the more grateful considering it wasn't even initially a priority of yours, and placing the gendarmerie under my jurisdiction was above and beyond my highest expectations. I was thrilled when you recognized sordid school rights to religious expression over Miss Walder's ridiculous objections. I was less enthused about your decision to pump our children full of strange chemicals in response to some unconfirmed health threat. Regardless, I'm looking forward to working more closely together during your next term. Me too, if it means more excellent dinners like this. Lillius raised her glass and smiled. We clinked glasses. By the end of the meal, I was pleasantly full and a little tipsy. The butler had led me back through the manor's winding corridors until I found the door. I waved at Lillius out the window as Sergei pulled away. The coming campaign would be turbulent, but at least I had her on my side. Or so I hoped. Okay, so at least I don't have to worry about her screwing me, and I don't have to worry about the majority of the USP screwing me. At the same time, I'm kind of screwed with this impeachment thing. I don't know how this is going to actually work, because I didn't think that you would get multiple impeachment cases or whatever, so I'm probably going to get impeached this time. Alright, and Ado has modernized my Air Force. Thank you very much. Alright. And we have the military parade. It was an unusual day for the residents of Usphq. Regularly used streets and avenues were blocked off by the military personnel. Many shops and cafes were closed, and once crowded stores were now empty. Instead, thousands of residents in Usphq were concentrated in one street, Victory Avenue. Stretching out through the heart of Usphq, people on both sides of the road were waving their Swordish flags proudly for the military parade. I was getting prepared to embark on my trip. It was going to be a short drive down the Victory Avenue until we reached the Maroon Palace. My company for this trip was Usphq, with Sergei, as usual, driving the presidential car. Usphq approached me. He was wearing his decorated ceremony unit outfit. He carried a sword with a goat head at the handle and his pistol by his hip. He put on his cap. Mr. President, we're almost ready. We will depart right after the tank column. Rumberg will think twice after today. They will tremble before the Swordish military might. After hearing the loud thump of a book falling down to the floor, he turned to a couple of privates that were doing the preparations on the schedule and started walking in their direction. Private, can't you do your job properly? I watched the young soldiers perform a lousy salute to Usphq. What is that salute, soldier? Watch, this is a real salute. He performed an excellent salute, and after scolding the privates, he walked back. Strict as ever. Old habits die hard. Sergei appeared from the entrance and joined us. Mr. President, Mr. Lankia. Sergei performed a salute to Usphq, which made Usphq smile under his mustache. At ease, Mr. Wolkner. Are we ready to depart yet? Yes, sir. Follow me, please. We started following Sergei through the corridors. Mr. President, have you seen the tanks? Our planes, too? Rumberg will be so scared when they see this. That is the plan. A great one, I'd say. My kids were very excited to wake up today. You know, to see the planes fly. Sergei, where did you do your military service? Morna, 7th Artillery Squadron. I still talk with many of my friends from those days. Camaraderie of military is never forgotten. I still talk with many from my days as well. What about you, sir? All over Swordland. Mr. President, was under my command once, Gumran Outpost. He turned to me. Do you remember those days? Who can forget about Major Lankia? We called him the Relentless. Usphq let out a long laugh. Good old days. We're here, sir. We exited the building and walked over to the clearance where the black Cadilla, the presidential car, was waiting. It was decorated properly for the event, and the top canopy had been removed so that we could stand and wave to people. On the way to the car, generals and admirals were lined up on both sides of the carpet. The atmosphere immediately changed when these experienced men who fought many times for their country saluted me. I saluted back with respect. I saluted the high-ranking military staff and attachés from Edo. We shook hands before proceeding. We entered the car and Sergei started the engine. Usphq was standing right next to me. The car started rolling. Even though there were many walls and trees in between the car and the crowd, I was able to hear the deafening sound of cheering assorted citizens. Gradually, we made our way to the starting point. A group of 10, maybe 12, latest technology S-16 fighter jets flew above our heads, and I thought that the engine sound was going to leave me deaf. Loud footsteps of the marching soldiers were followed by loud noises coming from tank engines. The tanks came into my view. They were top-of-the-line modern battle tanks. Their shining armor under the sun invigorated national pride. We waited for a few minutes for the announcement. Finally, it was our turn. On both sides of Victory Avenue, there were numerous citizens cheering my name, waving their Swordfish flags. Salute. Looking at the branches where the general staff was sitting at, I saw Tarquin Soul sitting next to General Vulcan. From this distance, it was hard to tell, but he tipped his hat off to me, and I could swear that he was smiling. He kept our slow and steady pace. We were almost at the Arthur S. Whiskey statue, several hundred meters away. A group of soldiers saluted me as we passed by. They looked proud and stout in the new infantry uniforms and with brand new rifles. We continued on as per schedule and finally arrived at the Maroon Palace, which marked the end of the parade. The people of Holsor dispersed to their homes. A clear message was sent to Rumberg by the display of our military might. We were about to see whether it would be enough or not. If I'm being completely honest, I kinda hope they still attack us, because in the last playthrough that I did, I was also facing impeachment then too. And when they attacked me, the impeachment trial was, they nullified it because we were in a state of war. So yeah. Media was bought by Rayne. Oh boy. And does Rayne face impeachment? The lies of Rayne. Alright. And the president was embarrassed in front of the nation. And they think Lillius Graff might take over. Interesting. I don't know if that's a bug or not though. Like I've never encountered that happen before, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I wonder if it would be because like even in the last playthrough I did pretty much the same thing. The only thing I think I did differently was I completely privatized who was it? I think I completely privatized both the both of the industries. I can't remember what their names was, but I completely privatized both of them. And I think the only other difference I had was that I investigated the old guard and I investigated the oligarchs, because I think I started with them first, but I couldn't really find anything. So I just went ahead and switched to the old guard. But pretty much the same things happened, but I don't know. We'll see how this is going to play out. Will of the state. Interesting. You know, if I could start a war and like accidentally bomb the Supreme Court, that would be great. Alright, let's see what we got going on here. Geopolitical. World leaders to gather at Alliance of Nations. Alright. So we're about to have a summit. At Constantium. Alright, definitely not Istanbul. Alright, read the report from Whole Sword, scheduled for the Alliance of Nations session. Okay. Alright. And now we have to head to it. This is going to be a big one. I, David Whiskey, and the rest of the Swordist delegation to the Alliance of Nations arrived in Beirut. The local police escorted us to the Alliance headquarters in downtown Constantium, immediately recognizable by its gleaming dome. On entering the building, we were met with a parliamentary guide who briefed us about the procedures. After a strict security screening, the staff ushered us to the third floor. We entered the massive circular assembly hall and took our designated seats. David sat next to me. The President of the General Assembly, Mr. Nines, opened the session with a short speech and called the first speaker to the floor. It is my great pleasure to invite the Prime Minister of Lesbia to address the Assembly. Patricio Alvarez stood and walked up to the podium as the Assembly applauded. Mr. President, it is my pleasure to return to this podium. David leaned in and spoke in a low voice. Let's see how crazy this year's session will get. Let's see. When I last spoke here, the message I gave was of encouragement and support to this organization and the vital role it plays. Of all the challenges Eastern Marcopa and the whole world has faced since then, one has grown larger and more imminent than any other. The threat of the so-called socialist states and the actions taken by their authoritarian rulers with no regard to international law. A loud noise came from the table of Volksland. I saw Emmerich Hegel pounding his fist on the table in protest. Look at this guy, he's an embarrassment. David nodded. Today, the need to come together as the leaders of the free world is more important than ever. The CSP, under the leadership of United Cantana, has been fueling Volksland's military-industrial complex and its expansionist aims in eastern Marcopa. The world cannot turn a blind eye to the increasing naval presence of Volksland in the Markian Sea. We hereby call for the immediate withdrawal of all naval vessels with any offensive capability from international waters. A lot of noise came from the assembly hall in response. Most of the Western Marcopan delegates were clapping, while others either shouted in protest or sat in stony silence. Let us also not forget about the recent events that transpired in another state with socialist teachings, a state that wages war against its own innocent citizens, Wayland. Oh boy, I'm just gonna keep listening. Their purge of the minorities in their country was again largely ignored by the international community. I would go as far to call it a genocide. Swordland violated our past treaties and gave support to this massacre with their armed forces, deploying them close to our borders. Lesbia was affected not only by the large wave of refugees coming from Wayland, but by the subsequent government seizure of all of our companies that were active in the country. The resources taken from these companies are being practically sold to Swordland. We hereby call the member states to action against Wayland and its Swordish caretakers. Thank you. I won't react, because you still have deals with me, you douche. He walked back to his seat amidst enthusiastic applause from most of the Marcopan delegates. President Nines waited for the noise to calm down and invited the next speaker, the president of Wayland, Victor Smolik. Smolik stood up. As he walked past Patricio Alvarez, he brushed him aside with an exaggerated sweep of his arms. When he reached the podium, he fumbled with the microphone for a few seconds. Then he smiled at Alvarez mockingly as he raised the height of it. Victor's a funny guy. Indeed, a murderous comedian. Richter turned to President Nines and bowed slightly. Mr. President. He then turned back at us and stared out into the hall for a few seconds. Fellow delegates, it is true that the world today faces a multitude of challenges. In the midst of these challenges, the world's most powerful leaders gather here in Kairut. And what do? They make threats, promote hate, and spread lies. Is this the alliance of nations we all want? Where's the cooperation and friendship? Where's the unity? I want to remind you of the wars that the West fought on our soil, on the foreign troops who occupied our country and seized our valuable resources. I want to remind you how they stole the oil from our sacred soil, and they did not know when to stop. The Edo soldiers left, but their interference never ceased. They financed armed rebel groups whose only purpose is to create terror inside our country. So, fellow delegates, don't you dare speak about Wayland before you acknowledge your involvement in our civil war, before you acknowledge your own dark past. I'll keep watching. As is well known, after the tremendous tragedy of the Wayland Civil War, Arcadia made a deal with United Cantana, where they agreed upon the withdrawal of their troops along with the removal of half of our army. Not only did they weaken us, we were left alone in facing the genocidal Brutish Freedom Front, which the Edo funds together with Runeberg. I will show you some of the evidence of foreign interference. He picked up a large stack of papers and waved them back and forth. I have clear evidence of direct aid from Runeberg to the Brutish Freedom Front. They smuggled tons of Ka-74s into Wayland. They smuggled in their spies, smuggled in mercenary commanders. He got balls taking on Runeberg in the West like that. David nodded in agreement. These documents will be published everywhere. Copies have already been sent to the investigative affairs of the Alliance of Nations. I expect this organization to do its task and investigate this properly, instead of leaving Wayland behind as they always done. Coming back to the claims of the lesbian representative, first, there is no evidence of civilian massacres by the Wessex forces, nor so-called purges of minorities. Second, the operation was limited only to the militant BFF, not the Blues in general. Third, we know your government is also implicated in the funding of the BFF, and that your oil companies aided their militants during the operation. Fourth, as the state, we only take what was ours. The companies the delegate spoke of were not only aiding militants, they were brought to Wayland by force. And lastly, Wayland has no caretaker. Wayland only has friends whom it cooperates with. He looked at me. Then he looked at the Arcasian delegates and the lesbians next to them. And enemies who want to keep it down. Know that Wayland will no longer recognize the right of any other country to determine what type of weapons we are permitted to possess or what type of policies we follow within our borders. Wayland stands stronger and more united than ever. Our people have spoken. The enemies inside our borders are crushed. Now I ask every delegate here to read our report on the connections of the West with the armed militants in Eastern Marcopa, and I ask the Alliance of Nations to do what's right. Wayland only wants peace. Our people want peace. They are counting on the support and understanding of all the nations of the world. Their proclamation is, free Wayland or death. The assembly roared, with particularly loud applause coming from the seats of the Rican nations. Damn, that was a strong speech. It will certainly be remembered. Richter slowly walked back to his seat as he applauded himself. He saluted the Rican delegates as he passed them. Next, President Nines invited Martin Van Horten to the podium. He walked up to the microphone with quick steps. He was frowning and clenching his fists. I could almost see his jaw trembling. Seemed like Martin is not in the mood. Can you blame him? His navy is being harassed by Volsland every day now. Mr. President, fellow delegates of the Assembly, and friends, it is an honor to be with you today. I wish we could meet under different circumstances. Once again, the CSP nations, and in particular Volsland, have shown us what they're willing to do to achieve their political aims. I must first thank the delegates from Sorland for being brave enough to support Agnolia when the whole world left us alone. We were one of the first countries to propose proper cooperation between Eastern Marcopan nations. Yet when we were threatened by Volkslandian expansionism, nobody came to our side. Although Mr. Alvarez voiced his indirect support for us earlier in today's session, I can't keep myself from wondering where he was when our fleets were under attack by the very socialists he spoke about. So, here I am, asking for the support of the fellow member states of the Alliance of Nations. Agnolia is under attack by Voxland. A loud banging noise emerged from the table of Voxlandian delegates. All of them were pounding their fists on their table. Those delegates need to learn some respect. That's for sure. Mr. President, please moderate the assembly. This is more than disrespectful. Impeachment began shouting curses as Nines repeatedly banged his gavel for order. After a minute of back and forth shouting, the noise settled and Nines allowed Martin to continue. As you all know, our drilling ships, oil tankers, and even fishing vessels have been disappearing in the Markian Sea, captured or sunk by Voxland. And the Voxlandian fleet is patrolling the seas around Helgeland with complete disregard to international laws. I call on the Alliance of Nations to find a resolution to this never-ending conflict that Voxland created. We demand the immediate withdrawal of all naval forces from our territorial waters. Melanyev's terror surrounds us on all sides. I call the democratic world to action against the tyranny of Melanyevism, authoritarianism, militarism, and extremism. The banging noise started again. Hegel stood up and approached the rostrum. You are a spineless jerk, a lackey of Arcasian imperialism. President Nines called for silence and started hitting the gavel. Keep listening. All of your complaints against us are a direct result of your capitalist and neo-colonialist systems. President Nines, please, what is this? President Nines smacked his gavel in vain as a shouting match broke out in the assembly. Finally, after a few minutes, the other Voxlandian delegates convinced Hegel to sit back down. I believe I don't need to speak more about this subject. Everything is clear as day. Mr. Hegel's action speaks volumes about the reality of Voxland and their corrupted ideology. I hope to see this conflict resolved with the help of the Alliance of Nations soon. He quickly left the podium and nodded to the other Agnolian delegate. The two left the assembly hall. President Nines announced this next speaker, Emmerich Hegel. Hegel immediately took his place and spoke in a low, seething tone. Thank you. David, buckle up. It's the Chancellor's time now. It looks like you're having fun, Mr. President. First of all, I want to extend a due welcome to the new states from Rica that have joined this organization. After fighting for years against colonialism and imperialism, they more than earned our membership vote. I am overjoyed to see them finally represented in this assembly. As our numbers grow and more states are represented in this stage, we came ever closer to finding resolutions to the conflicts that plague us. For hundreds of years, the dominant economies of Marcopa raised, pillaged, and exploited the continents of Rica and Xena. Sadly, Voxland was also a part of this plunder in the years before the revolution, when it still clung to the idea of imperialism. But when our masses found their voice, the old colonial powers and their new financiers turned against them. These powers did whatever they could to hamper our revolutions. They did not want the people to be heard. They are scared of us for showing the possibility of a better path. Of course, they don't want us to succeed. We threaten the productivity that runs on the blood and sweat of their working class. And now they have started labeling us the aggressors. Yet we all know it was the Arcasians who built up military bases all around Marcopa. It was Edo that was first formed to fight against Melanyevism. Keep watching. Voxland holds the right to protect its territorial waters and trade from threats. The delegates from Lesbia and Agnolia brought up the Phalanco Treaty. But what were they doing when Edo forces patrolled the Antician Sea? They were silent. And what about Helgeland? How about the Vogs being killed by the Agnolian government because they protested against an appointed governor? Agnolia and their allies in Sorland have no right to claim they are upholding liberty and democracy. Other nations have no right to intervene in the matters between Agnolia and Voxland. Just as no country in the world has the right to determine what type of naval vessels we use, no country can force us not to defend our seas. If there's a conflict the Alliance can resolve, let's start with the Arcasian base on Felico Island. Lesbia has been housing Arcasian troops and missiles by our border for years, and none of the member states even talked about it. I also want the member states to look into the Arcasian bases in both Lesbia and Swordland. And if the Alliance of Nations truly claims to have the people's best interests at heart, they cannot stay silent about what the Agnolian government did in Helgeland. How they took away the rights of our people. Perhaps then there can be proper dialogue between our nations, and the Alliance of Nations can finally demonstrate that it can serve its intended purpose. But unfortunately, the Alliance of Nations remains all too willing to overlook such human rights violations. However, the Voxlandian government is ready as always to fight the forces of oppression and colonial servitude on behalf of free people everywhere. He raised his left fist. Erolatin Vescor. Was that Sordis? Did I catch that right? He said the revolution will come, yes, but it was in Old Volgish. Very similar to Sordis, right? Some words are even written the same way, but I'm surprised you caught that from his accent. Most of the delegates from Xena, Rika, and Cantana responded with thunderous applause. Hegel shook hands with them as he walked back to his seat. President Nines announced the next speaker, Queen Beatrice Livingston. Dear President of the Assembly, dear delegates, dear leaders of the world, just as my fellow Eastern Marcopan delegates spoke about the troubles plaguing our continent, I also have to bring attention to a growing threat in our region, Swordland. As you know, not long ago, Swordish aircraft with offensive capabilities were spotted inside our borders. A few days later, they shot down one of our planes inside our airspace. It was practically an act of war. Know this, Runeberg will do anything in its power to defend itself and its interests, whether Swordland is actually planning something or not. Our Swordish neighbors and what they've been doing is very concerning. They took in traitors and gave them protection. Their president himself came to power amid murder and unrest, yet people from his administration had the guts to blame our government for inciting violence. And they expect the world to believe their lies. That hag. Let's first hear her out. Swordland is becoming a rogue nation that intervenes in other conflicts, such as the tragic operation in Wayland. Swordland even aided the illegal occupation of Helgeland by Voxland. They are increasing their military presence rapidly to further their dark aims. I hereby invite all of you to determine the initiation of a proper intergovernmental investigation into Swordland. If the Alliance continues to shirk its given duties, you can trust in Runeberg to take matters into her own hands. It is also important to point out that Runeberg will not stand idly by if more Arcasian military are transferred to Eastern Marcopa. I hereby condemn both the Ado and Swordland for allowing Arcasia to settle in our region. Before I finish, I also want to say, Mr. Smoluk, I'm looking forward to reading your report. I wonder what this so-called evidence is all about. Know that your slander does not work on us. Know that we are ready to die for our freedom. Know that our kingdom stands firm and strong. Expect the grand awakening. Thank you. Grand awakening. That sounded like a threat. She left the rostrum without getting much applause. Then President Nines spoke my name. Mr. Anton Rayne, President of Swordland, I invite you to address the assembly. David immediately started applauding. Good luck, Mr. President. I walked up to the rostrum and took my place at the podium. In front of me were some of the most powerful leaders in the entire world. I looked them in the eye. Thank you, Mr. President, fellow delegates. Anybody who ascends this rostrum must appreciate what a significant gathering he is addressing. Just as the speaker who preceded me, we too have our concerns to raise in this noble assembly. Our people are still not free from fear, not free from poverty and starvation. Today, we're confronted by a difficult choice. Our great achievements may either be used for the benefit or to the detriment of mankind. Now, I'd like to address some of the topics mentioned today. Where's Runeberg? I want to address Runeberg. It was earlier claimed that Wayland was involved in a genocide. Such strong words shouldn't be spoken without proper evidence. Sordland stands together with the Wessex people. I would also like to address the Queen. Well, I'll address Van Horten. Sordland stands together with Agnolia and will keep its stance against Volsland's aggression. And Sordland will do whatever it takes to make sure the aggressors will never achieve their aims. Emmerich Hagel pounded his fist on the table again. You are nothing but a puppet of Arcasia. President Nine slammed his gavel. I'll respond to him. And you are a puppet of Melaniev. President Nine slammed his gavel down again and warned me not to respond back. Next, I would also like to address that bastard in Runeberg. She talked about some hypothetical threat that our nation poses to Eastern Marcopa, while Runeberg's military has tripled in the last decade. It was Runeberg who shot our aircraft within our airspace. We only defended our borders. I also have some evidence to show to the Assembly. Mr. Smolik was right about the Ka-74s. We discovered that many militant groups in Sordland were being financed or armed by Runeberg. There's another important piece of evidence that we have, provided to us by someone close to the Runebergian government. Mr. Hailstone was branded as a traitor in Runeberg for blowing the whistle on the country's hidden nuclear facilities. I hereby call on the Alliance of Nations to serve its duty. Runeberg and its nuclear facilities must be properly investigated. Thank you for listening to our concerns. I wish to see a resolution from the AN soon. We stand and always will stand for the rights of the people of Sordland and Eastern Marcopa, just as those in other countries. There cannot be any more procrastination or delay. The AN must adopt decisions according to the wishes of the people of the world. Amorgna West Corps. There was some applause from the assembly. Thank you. I left the podium. I walked back to my seat. Naveed did not stop applauding until I sat down. How was it? It's not a bad speech, Mr. President. You did well. President Nines announced the next speaker, Dwight Walker. Mr. President, I first want to congratulate you on your election to this high office. Mr. Secretary, delegates to the Alliance of Nations, ladies and gentlemen, fellow friends, we meet again in our quest to bring peace and light into this world. But even though some of the clouds have lifted, the world has not yet escaped the darkness. The Contanin Security Pact is rapidly expanding its influence. It is very troubling to see the democratic nations of Marcopa be threatened by those Melanievis powers. I refer, of course, to the presence of the Volslandian and Contanin fleets in the Marchian Sea. They are harassing other nations and hampering international trade. Is this not an attack against world peace? An attack against the free trading nations of the world? Today, our obligations to world peace are being tested by the United Contana and Melanyevis bloc. If we fail to counter this threat, if we stay idle and allow them to surround us with their war machines and blockades, if the attackers do not face any consequences, then this unstable peace we believed we had built will be the world's downfall, and posterity will point its finger at us for not stopping. Emmerich Hagel and the other Voxlanian delegates started making noise again. This time, Hagel had taken off his shoe and was banging the table with it. Keep watching. Despite the noise Hagel made, President Walker continued his speech without pause. Despite its claim, the CSP's actions will only bring about war. Yet we still believe United Contana and Arcasia together with their allies can come to an understanding for our mutual benefit and our desire to avoid the destruction of the world. We believe that all the people of the world must be free to choose their own future. No country, be it Arcasia or United Contana, has the right to impose its values on others. But I will say this to the leaders of United Contana: if either of us is to be secure, we need a peaceful cooperation, not defense systems, forced blockades, or shows of naval superiority. If the Alliance of Nations cannot find a solution to this conflict, the ADO remains ready and able to react. Hagel stood up with his shoe in his hand. What is that supposed to mean? You're promoting war in the Alliance of Nations. Mr. President, this can... Nine slammed the gavel down and shouted, "Silence, please." Mr. Chancellor, please let me finish. We did not interrupt you when you addressed the Assembly. I must also raise my concerns about the threat that Runeberg poses to Eastern Marcopa. The speakers who preceded me clearly showed that tensions are rising. The reports from Wayland and Sorlin are troubling. The representatives from both countries referred to Ka-74s being smuggled within their borders. Mr. Rayne also pointed out the construction of nuclear weaponry in Runeberg. Our intelligence also confirms this. Arcasia and the ADO will stand against the aggression of Runeberg. They are playing a dangerous game, one that may bring ruin to Marcopa and their own lands. I believe the Alliance of Nations can find a resolution to this conflict as well. If not, let it be known that Arcasia will stand together with Sorlin. Runeberg cannot do as it pleases. Oof. Do you think Runeberg can pursue any more aggression after that statement? I doubt that. With our membership in ADO and Arcasia's clear support, the Queen needs to be crazy to try anything. Finally, I propose that the Alliance of Nations undertake the noble cause of helping the people of the world through rewriting and properly enforcing its Human Rights Declaration. The Alliance of Nations cannot survive as a static organization. Its size and duties are increasing enormously. It should adapt to the changing world. But peace and rights do not rest in the hands of this organization alone. They rely on the hearts of our people and the spirit of cooperation between our nations. So let it be known, my fellow inhabitants of this world, let us take our stand and see if we can finally achieve a lasting peace. Thank you. Most of the assembly applauded his speech, the ADO delegates in particular. I'll stand up and applaud. The applause continued for some time. Walker shook hands with various delegates on his way back to his seat. President Nine announced the last speaker before the break. It was Leon Melanyev. Melanyev slowly walked to the rostrum in his iconic suit. All of the CSP delegates stood up and applauded him. Whew. Honorable Chairman and fellow delegates to the Alliance of Nations. Here we are again at the most esteemed meeting of state representatives in the world. However, increasingly, we are being threatened, disregarded, attacked, or ignored in this assembly. The representative of Arcasia has just shown this unfriendly attitude toward us yet again. Arcasia would have you believe we are standing in the way of lasting peace, yet the peace they talk about was only possible thanks to our missiles and our growing base in the developing world. The ADO kept waging war against people's revolution and forcing new independent states to be their puppets, bringing them to themselves through the Arcasian lira. And now yet another Arcasian president is telling us that we are the aggressors and they are the keepers of peace. We will not be silent anymore against these lies. When was this peace you talk about? When was this cooperation between our countries? Have you ever accepted our invitation to talk about denuclearization? If you don't like us, don't accept our deals, don't listen to our concerns, and keep pointing fingers at us, why did you invite us to the Alliance of Nations? Every year, United Contana comes to this assembly to address the real problems of real people, people who suffer because of your systems, your wars, and your ignorance. Whether you like it or not, we'll keep representing the laborers, the slaves, the oppressed of this world, and believe it or disregard it, history is on our side. We say to the representatives of capitalist countries, come and visit us. Come and see the revolution working in Contana. Show our continent to your people without distorting the reality. If you cannot do that, then you need not come. We believe socialism will triumph over capitalism in the end, such as the logical conclusion of the development of humankind. This time, lesbian delegates started laughing very loudly. Some other delegates booed. Keep watching. You can keep laughing, gentlemen. Communism will bury you. Suddenly, the laughing turned into shouting. If you really believe in cooperation, we will be waiting. We're not going anywhere. However, if the ADO keeps intervening in our matters, it is natural that the CSP would react. Despite threats from ADO, Roomberg, or any other nation or organization, we must not succumb to further division and violence. We must ask ourselves, what do the people of our countries expect from us? They surely don't want war and bloodshed. So let us leave to our children and grandchildren good memories of our time and a better future for all. Let them look at history and say, once there was great division and complex problems, but the leaders of the world came together in the Alliance of Nations and succeeded in settling them in order to ensure our peaceful lives. Let us act in such a way to make this session not a session of threats, but a session of hopes and the realization of them. The government of United Contana and the United Peoples of Contana are ready to serve their duties for world peace. Long live the People's Revolution. That was a great speech. I'm just very concerned about the rising tensions between them and Arcasia. The assembly broke into massive applause. The applause continued for some time. Melaniev slowly walked back to his seat as the president announced a break. That was a lot. It definitely was. It's quite scary, to be honest. We need to be careful. We walked out of the hall to have some lunch and fresh air. Whew, alrighty. That was long. That was quite long. David had scheduled a private meeting with him, but he didn't specify what it was about. I heard a knock on the door. Mr. President, may I come in? Yes, David, please, come in. Thank you. He slowly made his way towards a chair in front of my desk and sat down. First of all, thank you for your time. Anything for you, David? I wanted to ask you how you're doing. Honestly, I'm tired, David. I'm tired of it all. Oh, I know the feeling. Trust me, I know. Sometimes you just want to throw away all the responsibility and escape. Perhaps into the wilderness, perhaps to the sea. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But I can never do that. Unfortunately, men of power are bound by duty and their responsibility to the nation. He started coughing. It has been many years since you were in my classroom. If there's one thing I learned from you, it is that power changes people. It makes them do things that were not imaginable before. True. I'm not gonna say true, but it changed me for the better. I'll just say desperate times require desperate measures. That is correct, but sometimes the ends do not justify the means. David coughed again, this time for longer. So, the elections are fast approaching. How are you feeling about your chances? We will win, no matter what. Good. That is what a leader should say. I'm afraid I have an announcement to make to you. An announcement? What kind? After the term is done, I will be retiring. I would be lying if I said I wasn't expecting this. I have been in this line of work for many decades now. I swore an oath to myself years ago. I would quit if I ever felt like I don't have the physical capability to serve anymore. At that point, I would become a hindrance. That time has come, Mr. President. My bones are aching, my hands are shaking, my voice is failing. Besides, I'm sure you can find a younger minister who is a little more full of life. He winked at me and chuckled, which turned into another cough. You have been a mentor, a teacher, and a friend. Thank you for your service to this country. It was an honor, Mr. President. David stood up to leave. I'm gonna hug him. Best of luck, Anton. Thank you. He turned around and left. Yeah, I think of all the people in this game, he may be one of the few that I like, regardless of, of everything else. He's one of the few good ones. Everybody else seems to have a motive, but he just seems like he really wants to help people. Okay, so, read the report from Wholesword. Existence of nuclear weapons in Runeberg confirmed. Yeah, you in trouble now. Alliance of Nations Intelligence has confirmed that the information from the Runebergian whistleblower was true. Runeberg does have nuclear weapons capable of threatening Swordland and Eastern Marcopa. Alliance of Nations ratified a barrage of sanctions on Runeberg by the member states. So yeah, they kind of screwed themselves there. Alright. President Rayne's impeachment trial date set. That's a problem. And yeah, president to be dethroned. Nice. Swordish foreign minister retires and Runeberg possesses nuclear weapons. All good things. Friday afternoon in the office. The door opened and Lucian entered. Mr. President, there is a problem. What is it now? Miss Walden wants to speak with you. Well, I know what this is about. She's in the white room. Please follow me. We started walking. What's so urgent? I was just told to come get you, sir. I opened the doors and we entered the white room. I looked around. So why did you call me here? Mr. President, I'll cut to the chase. I'm here to let you know that I will be handing you my resignation shortly. I see. You're trying to sabotage me before the election. That is not why. I simply cannot go on anymore after what happened. You're betraying me then. This is nothing as grandiose as a betrayal, but I suppose I owe you my reasons. I don't even know why I joined the cabinet at this point. You managed to bring an education in this country 20 years back in time. And who is at fault there? Don't blame everything on me. First you rejected my plans and now this. He took a deep breath. I looked at Sierra's determined face. I accept your resignation. Now get out of my face. Sierra and Lucian left and I took a seat alone in the white room. Alright, Sierra has resigned. About time, actually. Okay. Let's see what's going on in the news. There probably is just a report about that. Future of Rayne's cabinet. Yep, that's all that is. Alright, now I have dinner at home. With my impeachment trial looming, I had practically been sleeping at the Maroon Palace lately, but tonight I made a deliberate effort to get home early. I had told Monica and Dana I wanted a family supper, just like in the old days. Monica had promised to cook something special. I didn't know if it was my imagination, but there seemed to be more guards outside my complex than usual. I hurried past them, went inside, and locked the front door behind me. I had heard footsteps coming my way. Hi, Papa. Let me see. Let me just hug her. I opened my arms to embrace my daughter. She hugged me back happily. Where's your mother? She's in the kitchen. I've got to do some homework before dinner. I followed her with my eyes as she went upstairs. She was starting to look more and more like her mother. I stepped into the kitchen. Monica was stirring a pot on the stove, her back turned to me. Hug her from behind. I snuck up behind Monica and gave her a hug. She screamed and dropped the ladle. When she realized it was me, she smiled and gave me a kiss on the cheek. Sorry, Anton. I guess I've been on edge lately. Why don't you go fix yourself a drink in the living room? I'll let you know when dinner's ready. I sat down in the living room, poured myself a bit of whiskey, and flipped through one of Monica's women's magazines. Dana came rushing back down the stairs and made a beeline for the coffee table. She picked up her pencil case. Almost forgot that. What do you hear from your brother these days? Not much. He writes me letters sometimes. Papa, are we a socialist hive mind? Not if I have anything to do with it. Monica appeared in the doorway. She smiled at the two of us. Dinner's ready. The three of us gathered around the dining room table. Monica ladled out bowls full of zabla. The stew tasted as good as it smelled. Now that we're all here, I wanted to say something. I know the past 4 years have been hard on all of us. I was so busy focusing on the need of Swordlish people that I sometimes forgot about Sorlin's most important people, my own wife and daughter. I hope someday we will be able to put this behind us and be a normal family again. Monica's eyes were shining. And we'll have plenty of time for that, because I'm retiring from politics at the end of this term. Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and do that. Screw all this. I am going to turn around and just leave. Monica and Dana looked at me in shock. Anton, you can't do that. Not for my sake. I can and I will. Monica slammed her hand down on the table, surprising me and Dana. No, the Anton Rayne I married wouldn't give up so easily. Think of everything you've accomplished, and everything you have left to do. Everything we have left to do. Yeah, Papa, you gotta stay strong. You're right. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's settled then. You'll fight and you'll win. Yes, for you two. Monica and I smiled at each other. Yeah, you just completely forgot about your other child. Can we finish dinner now? Of course. The three of us ate and animatedly discussed our plans for my next term. Once we had cleared our plates, I went up to my study. I still had work to do. Damn it, let me take the easy way out because I am definitely going to lose this impeachment trial. Sometime later. I don't like it when I see stuff like that. It's probably bad. And the music is somber, so you know it's bad. Any news things here? Impeachment Trial of Anton Rayne, Supreme Court of Wholesword. I took a deep breath and opened the grand doors leading to the Supreme Court. There were no camera flashes this time, no journalists or reporters. Nobody was allowed in the courtroom except the people related to my case. The attendees watched me quietly as I walked down the aisle to the defendant's table. Take a seat. I took a seat and everyone followed suit. A quiet chatter began in the courtroom, which continued until the door behind the podium opened. A court clerk entered and ordered everyone to rise for the judges. You know, fuck them. The Supreme Court justices entered and took their seats one by one. I looked at Chief Justice Usphq Hawker. After he was seated, he pulled out his reading glasses and quickly rifled through the documents in front of him. He put down the papers and looked at me. This court is now in session. You may be seated. I call the case of the impeachment charges against the President of Sorlin. The case number is 385372. This case will proceed as follows. Both parties will have the opportunity to present their evidence. The prosecution will be called upon first, followed by the defendant. After both parties present their claims, the court will present its final verdict on this case. Chief Justice Hawker, please proceed. Thank you, Ms. Edmonds. With the declaration of the emergency, President Rayne modified and suspended the rights of freedom. Articles 100 of the Constitution of Sorlin clearly states the following. No state shall, in the case of national emergency, modify or suspend the rights of freedom, defined in Article 100 of the Constitution, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. Previously, the Supreme Court did not find any imminent danger to the existence of Sorlin and nullified the validity of this Emergency Act. However, this court accepts the case as a crime against Swordlish people and high treason against Sorlin. The evidence is clear and has now been presented in the court. We will now proceed with the defendant. In the light of these allegations, what do you have to say for yourself? All I have to say is this. Fuck you. That sounds about right. Might as well go out with a bang. Silence! I will not allow improper language in this courtroom. This court will now proceed with the final evaluation of the evidence before announcing the verdict. The justices all stood up and left the room. I started thinking about my life up to that point. Where had it all gone wrong? Half an hour passed. Where the hell were the justices? After nearly an hour of excruciating waiting, the door opened again. The justices took their seats to deliver the final verdict. I took a deep breath. The gavel was tapped 2 times, and Orso Hawker demanded silence in the loud room. After a long pause, he ordered everyone to rise. One of his retainers handed him the letter with the verdict. Orso opened it with a barely suppressed smile. Knowing what was coming next, you felt that you did the best for Swordland, no matter what. The next words you heard were, "It is hereby decided that Anton Rayne is impeached from office." The crowd in the courtroom, the very same people who celebrated your inauguration, erupted in loud cheers. You thought about how you would go down in history as the first impeached president of Swordland. But the judge wasn't done speaking. For the magnitude of his crimes against Swordland, Anton Rayne is sentenced to life in prison. The crowd cheered even louder this time. Security officers grabbed your arms and started walking you towards the door. As you were walking, you worried about the future of your family. Your cell was cold and lonely. The only decorations you put on the damp, dark walls were photos of Frank and Dana. For a while, reading was the only thing you could do. After finishing the precious books sent by Monica, you kept yourself busy by writing your own memoir. Meanwhile, your family visited you at least once a month. Time flies in jail. No, it does not. Frank visited you for the first time in years, bringing along his wife and son. They reminded you of your own family in better times. You held your grandson for the first time. He squirmed and started crying in your arms. Frank told you that he joined the ranks of the People's Freedom Justice Party. You congratulated him. It had been months since Monica's last visit. In the middle of the night, the warden knocked roughly on the door and told you had a visitor. Frank, his wife, and Dana were waiting for you with teary eyes. Something was wrong. Seeing you, Dana quickly turned around, hiding her face. Frank couldn't hold his tears anymore and told you that his mother passed away. His mother, your wife, Monica. You were overcome with grief. You returned to your cell, numb and exhausted. Every passing second was torture as you rotted away in this dark, isolated hellhole. Lying down on your bed, you looked at your belt and the metal pipe in the ceiling. And I'm not going to end it all. You spent the rest of your life between 4 walls. Eventually, old age caught up with you. You were discharged from prison to the hospital to spend your last moments with your family. As you took your last breath, you grabbed Frank and Dana. You pulled them close and said, "I'm sorry." Frank and Dana started crying and hugged you. You could feel you were slipping away. Your eyes filled with tears and started to close, never to be opened again. And so, Anton Rayne was no more. And I was impeached. Well, ain't that about a motherfucker? So yeah, that is Suzerain, and that is one of the many endings you had. So in the last ending, I turned around and had it also ended out poorly. I think this is bad, but not as bad as the other one. The last ending I ended up getting into a war with Runeberg. Things turned poorly. and the entire country was nuked, and a nuclear exchange started. World was completely destroyed. So yeah, and it was mainly because I think I drug Ado into the war. So in the end, you have a choice between fighting the war. If you choose to fight a war with Runeberg, you have the choice of actually bringing Ado into it, or you can turn around and just go ahead and bring your allies if you have that many. I think if you have a certain amount of allies, you can win successfully. If you bring Ado into it, however, you lose no matter what. Because if you bring Ado into it and you start a war, like an actual war, an offensive war with Runeberg, they're gonna nuke you because they're gonna get help from the United Contana, and it ends poorly either way. But these choices ultimately don't reflect what I would actually do in these situations. So yeah, I don't honestly know how that would turn out, and I'll be playing that in my own spare time. So if you want to see me play with my actual decisions and so on and so forth, let me know. I would probably end up skipping over a lot of things in the process, and I would just be playing, you know, and just showing you the results of certain things, but I wouldn't actually be playing the entire game completely. It would probably take a few episodes, but yeah, that would be the thing. But yeah, that's the end of this playthrough. So yeah, I really liked the game. It was really good. It is one of the best political games that I've ever played, honestly. And I play a lot of political games. You know, I'm pretty sure people have heard me mention, I played Crisis of the Kremlin. I played The Political Process, Democracy, geopolitical simulators, Power and Revolution. I just play a ton of political simulators, and when it comes to, you know, you being a president and stuff like this and having to deal with the actual problems, this is bar none the best game. Yes, it is a narrative-driven game, so that it's more of a narrative-driven story, so you don't have the simulation aspects of like democracy or things like that. But it's definitely one of the best political games, if not the best political game that I can possibly think of right now. And I would definitely tell anybody, if you wanted to play a game with a good political story and a good idea of what politics is like, this is it. So, you know, this is definitely the most realistic I've ever seen as far as like as politics go, especially when it comes to being president, because I've had ridiculous things happen on like geopolitical simulator and stuff like that. Not saying it couldn't happen, but I've had a lot of things happen on those. And then other games are kind of flawed in a lot of different ways, or they're just kind of stat-based things. But this is a really good story, and while it does have some flaws that I don't necessarily like, overall it is by far the best game, one of the best games I played this year too. So, but it's definitely one of the best political games that I've played. So, I hope you like the video. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me if you want to see more of Suzerain. Would you like to see a slimmed down version and perhaps me just doing a playthrough of my own decisions? Or maybe I can just go ahead and play through the game and just show you my ending and what happened, and just kind of give you an overview of what happened. And or maybe we can look at some other different playthroughs. But yeah, that was Suzerain. So if you liked the video and you've liked this series, like this video, go back and watch the rest of the series. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. I have plenty of stuff on the way, and I have plenty of stuff that you can watch in the meantime. I think the next game that I will be doing, I will either do a vote on it, or I'll turn around and just go ahead and release it in the next one. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure I'll give a little update vlog or something like that here soon. So I have really appreciated all the support from both Torpor Games and everyone else watching these videos. I really do appreciate it. I really appreciate this support. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next series.